Hi, everybody. Welcome to Crowd Chat with Cassie, Elle. That's me. I'm Cassie. Today I have our guest, Arthur, is it Franz? Franz?
Franz.
Okay.
That's
I
me.
always want to say it super fancy, like whenever I read your name. I want to say Franz. Anyway, today I'm talking with Arthur about his game Breakaway Football that is on crowd sale right now. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about some cool stuff and one of the reasons why I'm excited that Arthur's on the show. I'm revamping the show a little bit to be more about bringing in the crowd and marketing and how to sell yourself to the crowd and how to get the crowd chatting about you. The show used to be more of an interview kind of show, and I'm still going to definitely have people like Arthur on the show for interviewing, but the focus is going to be more about how did you bring in your crowd, what have you done to bring in the crowd, things like that. So it can be a little bit more of an educational aspect, and not just learning about someone's life and their history, how they got into the game industry, which is all interesting. But we want this show to be a little more educational, like I said. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. And the reason why I am excited about the revamp and bringing Arthur on is because your game is a theme that's not easy to market and bring a crowd in for. This is a game called Breakaway Football, and it's really hard to bring in a crowd for sports games. So I'm excited to hear. First of all, go ahead, tell us a little bit about how you came up with the game, a little bit about the game itself, and then we'll get into the marketing part.
Okay, that sounds good. Just the smallest way that I could say it, I wanted to make a game that kind of straddled the fence between X's and O's football strategy, but played in a reasonable amount of time. I grew up playing Stratomatic football, which is a 3 or 3.5 hour experience, and it's a lot of fun, but I'm old. I don't have time for that anymore. When I'm a teenager, it was fine. So I wanted to bring modern board game sensibility into football, and you had to actually make some concessions to do that. So instead of it being 100 yards in 1 yard increments like real football, we do 5 yard increments. We do simple card play instead of charts and dice and graphs and individual player cards. So there's a lot of give and take as far as the mechanisms go. But the way that it's come together, it took about 2.5 years to really
Wow.
get it right. And people are responding very, very well to it. Yeah, it was a labor of love. I mean, nobody's beating the door down for it, but the people who encounter it, it's almost like coming across this mystical stone in the forest, and they uncover it and go, what is this creature? And then people literally fall in love with this thing. One of the most flattering things that I've experienced is a gentleman who isn't a Facebook user, but reached out to me by email, bought the game, bought
Oh,
all of
wow.
the expansions, and wrote a glowing review of the game. And it's up on BGG right now. This was about two
That's
months ago.
great.
And that's the whole reason I'm doing this. So it's really exciting. Thanks for having
Yeah,
me on the show,
absolutely. You've
too.
been on the show once before, but it was, like kind of the way the show used to be, where we just chatted a little bit about, we talked about Breakaway Football, but we also talked about the next game you have in the works, Mardi Gras Madness. I'm
Hmm.
glad that you got to be back on the show and we can focus on your football loving. And because I know, like you said, this is something that's a passion for you. And before we were live, he was showing me one of the games that he's worked on in the past that's also football related. So I can tell this is definitely a passion of yours.
Yeah, I used to
Oh,
coach.
okay.
I started coaching. Yeah, I started coaching when I was 19, and I coached tackle, flag, and I actually coached for 1 year for a women's
Ooh.
tackle football team here in New Orleans, which was a lot of fun. But I have over 10 years experience coaching football. But I have a wife and two children and a career. So again, it's a time thing. So board games give me an opportunity to be creative, but also explore my passion and bring other people along for the ride. So
That's
it's been a lot
great.
of fun.
Oh, I clicked on the wrong thing. Yeah, that's great. I don't think that it's an easy thing to do to bring those. Not that they're so polar, because there is some game to sports. There's so many discussions about is what sports
Yeah,
are considered games and what sports are considered activities, and there's so
yeah.
much discussion about it.
I'll tell you with football, if I could let you know, the hardest thing about simulating football is it's very fiddly. If you talk to any game designer and you try to explain football, they'd go, "That's too many rules. There's way too much going on. You gotta pare that down." So that was one of the reasons I felt comfortable taking those steps and kind of removing some of the complexity of real football because it just wouldn't be sustainable in a board game. And I'm very happy with the result. But yeah, I mean, whether it's football or train sets or anything, bringing a crowd to your experience, it's all about finding people who have that like interest and who are going to be curious about what you've
Definitely.
created.
And so this game, I guess we can go ahead and get right into, because I have a couple of questions about.
Sure.
So how did you get the game players that aren't really into sports to try the game out? Because I think playtesting and prototyping in general is a really difficult thing to do alone. Now you have a theme that's not necessarily the most popular theme. So how did you get through that kind of difficulty?
Well, what I was lucky to have is co-designers. So I didn't design this game by myself. There's actually three other names on the box. Yeah, it's Mark Burlett, Ben Jennings, and Michael Kaplan. And they're old friends of mine. I mean, I've known, I think, Mike for 33 years. I want to say Mark for 32, Ben for like 28. So we know each other a long time, and we've always enjoyed football. We even would play tackle or touch football on holidays. So, and we all have sort of the same understanding of it. But I was really passionate about the project, and so I would engage each of them for different pieces of it. Mike came up with the very innovative timekeeping mechanism where you're basically just discarding cards. So instead of having any kind of timer, little fiddly bits or a dial that you move, there's a whole bunch of ways to keep time. All we do is discard a card, and that's a minute of the clock. And so it's just about taking the concept and boiling it down to its bare minimum. But I was able to play with them, and I also have other friends, Richard Inglis and a few other people here local in New Orleans who would play with me. My wife and my daughter, actually. My daughter is a natural play caller, and she beats me very, very regularly. She's 16 now, but she was 13 when we were really doing this. But then I developed a solo mode because I couldn't get enough people to play with me frequently enough to really test all the mechanisms. Each team has its own special way of breaking the rules, and that represents its roster. So to test those, there was pretty rigorous testing over about 2.5 years to get those right. Right now, there are 18 teams, and we have 2 more coming out next month. And I don't know when we're going to stop. We'll stop at some point, but right now it's still fun, so we're going to keep doing it.
Sorry, the video just did a thing, so it was catching up to your audio, and I was like, well, no, it's not you.
Sorry about that.
I was like, what? And then it caught up to you. That's really cool that you were able to have not only co-designers, but that you have family members that are willing to play this with you as well. And I mean, I guess it's kind of good and bad that you had to make and ended up making a solo version of the game, because there are a lot of people that like solo versions, but it's almost like you had to do it.
I felt like I had to because I wanted to play the game every day, and it was not reasonable or feasible to convince people to play it every day. But I really enjoy the game that much where I would, for the first probably year and a half, play it every day. But believe it or not, the solo mode is so popular, it's probably played more as a solo game than it is as a head-up. So it was designed as a two-person head-up game, and it expands to 4 because you have an offensive and a defense, and so you could split those duties between 2 people for both teams. So you could conceivably play up to 4, and the downtime's really limited. If you're into football, you're watching and you're enjoying it anyway. But as a solo experience, one of the challenges was how would I design an AI that was smart enough and would obfuscate its calls well enough that I couldn't guess what it was doing all the time. And we accomplished that. Some of it is basic randomization, and some of it is a chart with some dice. And it's a lot of fun.
It is hard to make a solo game, like you said, that's not predictive. You have to make it competitive for yourself. And especially as the designer, you already kind of try not to count cards while you're playing. So
yeah. The real challenge there is making sure that pure randomization is not satisfying. If you know that it's just whatever comes up, then there's no perception of thought on the part of the AI, and so that's not as fun. But the defense is really smart. I've built a way to roll dice, and the number of dice you roll gives you a better probability to get run or pass. And so, depending on down and distance and a few other factors, you literally roll 1, 2, 3, or 4 dice. That's it. So the only choice is how many dice are they rolling, and it's not even a choice. You just look at the chart and figure out how many they roll. And when you roll, 99% of the time they're going to give you a plausible play, and very often they will get a breakaway on you. So it's a lot of fun.
So how did you get gamers who don't play sports often not to play test, but to try it out? Because you said solo players seem to be the most popular ones to play. How did you find these people to play it?
Yeah. So there are whole hosts of groups on Facebook for solo board gamers and also for sports board gamers. And so I reached out to a couple of sports board gaming closed groups. So one's a public group, but another one's a closed group, and you've got to answer, the troll's riddle to get into the group. but there are about 18,000 people, I think, in the one group.
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And oh no, it's a big thing. But it's a lot of folks who are probably older than I am, and certainly remember Stratomatic Football and Pay Dirt and all these other games as they were growing up in the 60s and 70s, which is really the heyday, in my opinion, of sports board gaming. Those games focus on simulation and statistical accuracy. And so the game that I've built with the help of the other designers is not necessarily about statistical accuracy. It really is about capturing the flow and the plausibility of X's and O's, but not to the point where you would capture, this particular halfback ran this many times for this many yards. And so it's a hard sell for some of those folks who are more steeped in that statistical accuracy. But the people who have taken a chance and played it have really enjoyed it, because they recognize that part of stripping away that unnecessary complexity allows you to just focus on the decision making. And the decision making is really where the fun is. What type of run am I going to call? And what type of defense is my opponent going to call? And let me see if I can outwit them. It's almost like a mix between chess and poker, because you really are trying to read your opponent. And you also have imperfect information from the formation that they put on the board. So you kind of know what they're probably going to do, but you don't know for sure. So you're really trying to study the person, the tendencies, and the entire arc of the game. By the middle of the third quarter, people have pretty much shown you what they prefer to do. And so now you can make much more educated guesses. And that's why games really laser down to that last drive.
So you found these people that were totally interested in these kinds of games in these Facebook groups. Have you had anyone come and say to you, I didn't think I was going to be interested in this game, but XYZ happened, and now I'm actually really interested in football right now?
Absolutely. And I think it was a harder sell before we were overt about letting people know which teams inspired the teams that we've published. So like I said, there are 18 teams, and each of them is inspired either by a style of offense or a specific season from the National Football League or the NCAA college ball. So for example, last night, I played a game last night. I did. And it was the Stallions versus the Minutemen. Now, that means nothing to anybody who doesn't know the game, but it's actually the 2006 Indianapolis Colts versus the 2007 Patriots. And that's a game that pretty much happened. They played year over year. And the one time they played, it was 24-21, and the Patriots won a last second. I think they scored a last second touchdown to win it. Well, the game I played last night was 24-20. But the Stallions won because I was coaching them, so I was able to get some revenge. And so when you sort of package the game that way and say you have the ability to do these what-if scenarios. What if the Bears of '85 played against the Packers of 1966? Well, you can do that. That's the Rhinos versus the Stackers. And you can have all these wonderful combinations of these teams inspired by real historical teams, and they're very easy to recognize. Anybody who is a fan of the NFL going back, it doesn't take a lot of work to figure out which teams are based on which teams. We even use similar color schemes. They're close enough that we aren't infringing a trademark for the NFL, and we don't use their real names, and we don't use player names. All of that is to make sure that trademarking is good. But you know who that is. You know who that is. And so once people saw, oh, this is grounded in reality. It's not just some fantasy, a team that that I don't have any affiliation to, and the X's and O's on the card, that's not very fun. Oh, but now that I see this is the Dolphins of 1984, oh, okay, I could try that. So that was probably the big hurdle to get them into the game. And really, once you play the game once, you understand how it works, and you probably want to play it again.
Just speaking from someone who doesn't, I'm into baseball, and that's like the only sport that that I get into. But so speaking from someone who's not into football, knowing that these are real things that occurred, but you haven't made them so complex that it's like, oh, well, if you wanted to play the 19 so-and-so team from the something year, and for me, it's like, oh, I just pick the Pharaohs. Oh, I just pick, so for me, that's really, that's more helpful because it makes me more interested and not feeling so overwhelmed. Because like you've mentioned before, football is just very complicated and complex. And when you can remove a lot of those, I would say it's barriers to entry, really, when you can remove those and then you can put it out into a game for someone that wasn't really interested in that theme anyway. And you're like, no, I made it easier. You can just give it a try and, you make it actually enjoyable and not like a puzzle, not so puzzly.
My wife, I've been married almost 18 years, and she's not really a football person, but she watches football and she understands what's going on for sure. But she's not a coach by any stretch, and she has absolutely taken me to town on this game. Maybe it's a lot. No. She's actually a pretty good play caller. But that's the whole point. It's to make the barrier to entry, as you say, lower. All you have to do is pick the type of run or pass that you want, and it has a single-digit value in the top right corner. So if I want to throw a good pass, I can look at my passes, which are all blue, and the runs are all orange. So right there, visually, it's very easy to select the runs and the passes, and then you just the single digit number. Oh, this is a pass that's a 6. It must be pretty good. What type of pass is that? Oh, it's a medium pass. Super. I'll try that. I hope they don't blitz, right? I mean, that's essentially the decision you're making. But if you have two people who have similar understanding of football, whether they're novices or both experts, they're going to have that same kind of head-up matchup that's very satisfying. The only time that it would be problematic, I guess, is if you had somebody who knew the game really well and you had a first timer and you didn't set the right matchup. But we even have the ability to tweak the matchup. Some teams are weaker than others. And so if I were going up against somebody who had never played the game before, I would definitely take one of the weaker teams and give them one of the stronger teams, and that would provide the right amount of balance.
So the base game plays 1 to 4, but you said you have expansions for the game. For the base game,
yes.
I just lost my question. For the base game, when you're playing against an opponent, is there I don't know how to say it. Is it a lot of sitting and thinking? Or is this how football is a lot of...
Yeah.
There's a thing happening, and then all of a sudden stuff's going on really crazy. There's nothing where it's we have to keep playing really... Because, the game says it's kind of like live football, but it's not so
Yeah, it's not a lot of quiet thinking followed by 5 seconds of frenzied activity. I think that's what you're describing, and that is what football can look like if you're not really paying attention and it's sort of off periphery. It's guys standing around and all of a sudden they throw themselves at each other and then they're standing around again. You're like, what are they doing over there? No, the real decision making is what play am I going to call next? And so whether you're on offense or defense, that's the main decision that you're making. But once the cards go on the board, there's actually another decision that can be made. You can audible, and it's one of the few games that actually allows you to have a realistic audible that makes sense. And an audible is when you want to change your mind. So if I played my card on the board, just like a quarterback who walks up to the line of scrimmage and everybody's set up and they're ready to snap the ball, but the guy looks out and says, oh, I think they might be blitzing. I better change the play to the other thing that we want to do. Well, all of the play cards have a top and a bottom that are reversed. And so if you literally rotate the card 180 degrees, you call the other play, the one that was on the bottom. And that gives you the flexibility to fake somebody out. I can come out in a formation that's a run-heavy formation and load up a run. And if I see that my defensive opponent puts up something that's probably a big run defense, I'll just audible to a pass and see if I get lucky. And that's the kind of outwitting that people really get excited about. When you flip both cards over and resolve, it's a matter of single digit arithmetic. If there is a special circumstance where one play is the perfect play call against the other, we call that a breakaway. There's a very simple way to resolve that. But most of the time, it's single digit arithmetic. And then you're pulling a game day card, which is the way that we've abstracted all of the potential complexity of people dropping passes or making outstanding catches or breaking tackles or getting penalties or fumbling. All the stuff that can happen is in a 54 card deck. And when you pull one, if it matches the play type, you apply it. And if it doesn't, you ignore it. So it's really simple to resolve a play. It takes 2-3 seconds to resolve a play. All the fun is in the decision
So do you explain, when you're talking to gamers, do you explain that this isn't just a football game, this is a game that you are familiar with? There's surprise elements, there's strategic, so are these the things that you're using to pull in the gamers? Because you know how to pull in the sports fans because you've been able to explain to them how these are based off of real events. But pulling in the gamers you have to almost, it sounds bad, but you almost have to say it's not all about the football part.
You're right. No, and it is steeped in theme. And if you know something about football, it really does sing. And if you don't, then there's a little barrier to entry. But honestly, it's no different from a war game. I mean, if you're interested in skirmishes that tell a larger story of a campaign, right? These are individual battles that all get fought, and then we see who wins the war. That's basically a football game. Each time you run a play, it's a skirmish, and over the course of the drive, that's a campaign, and over many campaigns, you either win or lose the war. It really isn't that much different. But for folks who didn't grow up with football or aren't really excited about it, it can be more of a hard sell. That's why we've focused, just to pivot to the marketing strategy, we've focused our marketing using Facebook ads, and we're targeting people who have a combination of interests. First of all, we're only targeting men, and I feel bad about that, but in my experience over the last 3.5 years, there have been very few women who are interested in the product. That doesn't mean that once they play it, they don't enjoy it. Like I said, my wife and my daughter are actually really good at it, enjoy playing it, but we wanted to try to build a core audience that we knew had those interests coming out of the gate. It's sort of an easier sell. So we've limited, just for the crowd sale, we've limited that to men, and actually it's men between the ages of 39 and 60. So we're laser focusing on people who grew up playing sports board games. They also are, they're people who have expressed interest on Facebook of football and the National Football League and board games. So if you don't fit that mold, you'll never see our advertising. And that's just, we're just trying to drill down to the right subset of people. It's still like 3 million people. Yeah. but that's sort of
I'm actually going to switch over to the website because I've seen that you've had this game on, not on crowd sale before, but you have had it on the Game Crafter for a little while, and you have the, what is that called? The Tachyon Accolade. And so that means, you've sold a good handful of games, at least 50. I'm trying to get down to the bottom of the page. Oh, scroll too fast. There it is.
Yeah, I think it's in the mid 60s is where we are right now.
Yeah, that's really excellent. So has it been all Facebook ads from then to now that's brought the crowd in?
But believe it or not, we did not do very much Facebook advertising.
No
that is
way.
all
That's
word
great.
of mouth. We started doing the ads specifically for the crowd sale because so many people can benefit from it. We figured it was worth spending a little bit of money to let people know it's there. And if they want to opt in and get it at the lowest possible price in history, then they should. And we're pleased. We've made, I don't know how many sales we've made so far. It's still in the single digits, but we actually had people purchase expansion packs that aren't part of the crowd sale. So that's what we're seeing, is that people are seeing the value in the core game, so they'll get that, and then they'll go out and get some of the expansions that they want in addition as add-ons. But yeah, the expansion content is what makes the game so good. It's all the different teams, which each play differently, and also we have a weather expansion. So if you want to play in snow, if you want to play in rain, you can do that. And it basically just swaps out the game day deck for a rain day deck or a snow day deck. And they're themed. The little pictures are adorable. And so you have, and the boards are themed. So it comes with a new player mat that has a rain theme or a snow theme. And man, that really helps get you immersed in what's happening. You can replay at that point the Ice Bowl, which is the very famous 1967 game between the Packers and the Cowboys. And we don't have the Cowboys team, but you can take any other team and put them up against the Stackers and replay the Ice Bowl in negative 12-degree weather. And that's a lot of fun. Yeah. So people really like the expansion content. Oh, the other thing that is available is Red Zone. So we had a gentleman say, look, I want to play a whole season with these teams. And I said, that is fantastic. And he said, yeah, but I need a way to cycle through all the other games, the ones that I'm not coaching. I need those to go faster because a solo game takes about an hour to play. So I said, okay, and I developed a product really just for him, but I saw the benefit of it. And so it's called Red Zone. It's a way to super sim, almost like in a video game where you can simulate more quickly the game. So you don't really have a lot of control over it, but you're still pulling the cards. And you can play an entire game in about 12 to 15 minutes. And that way, anybody who wants to do a full season can actually use that add-on to run their whole campaign.
That's really cool that you have all of these expansions and that people are not just getting the crowd sale, but they're coming back for more. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Did you market the expansions at all, or are they just finding those organically through the crowd sale?
Yeah, so our target audience was built by going out to some of the board game groups, the sports board game groups, and just letting people know that the game existed. And we've been very fortunate that some of our early adopters were very vocal. They went out to message boards. The Delphi forums is a really active sports board gaming discussion area. And they said, hey, guys, you're missing out. This is a great game. You got to try it. And people who hadn't played the game yet said, what, there's no player cards, there's no dice, there's no this, like it's not even a game. And they're like, you got to try it. You got to try it first. And yeah, pretty much everybody who tries it loves it. So we've been very fortunate to have that kind of activity. And then all of those folks who are really advocates or for the game, they gather on our Facebook group, which is the Breakaway Football board game Facebook group. I think right now we're up to about 153 members right now. And we'd love to have more. So anybody who wants to come and join, you don't need to buy the game to join. It's free. And you can get actual tips on how to play. Very often, if people have questions about the rules or need a sort of a crowd interpretation of how something works, they'll go to the board game group. And I'm really happy because in the early days of that group, I was the only one who really would answer the questions as the primary designer. But now when people come onto the group and ask the questions, other group members are answering the questions and they're answering them correctly. So you know that the game has legs when other people are helping the group succeed. So it's really exciting.
That's really awesome. I'm very excited for you. And it sounds like you have fans, which is really cool. It's always fun to have fans. Well, I think we're pretty much out of time. We covered a lot of the stuff, and I learned all about the game, learned about the marketing. From my takeaway, it's definitely I like that you have the honed in Facebook ads. They're very specific to exactly what you're looking for. And I think that's definitely helpful. And I think that's really cool that you found, I had no idea there were these sports board game groups. I guess you just have to go out and look for the things that your game is about. And there's probably a group about it.
Absolutely. Yeah, just one last word on marketing. It would be a harder sell to just blast this out to everyone. It really just becomes part of the noise. And so what I learned over a long period of time is that you really want to get people who are already predisposed, and the impetus for them to click is it's much less effort for them to click because it's already something they're interested in. So yeah, the Facebook ads have been very helpful. The cost per engagement is a good indicator of whether your ad's doing well or not. And so just in the first day, I think we reached 1,200 and some odd people with the ad, which is good. And then the amount of money that we're paying per click, when we weren't doing this really focused, targeted criteria, it was costing anywhere from 65 to 75 cents per click, which really is not very good. Now we're down in about the 12 to 16 cent per click range. So we're getting more interaction from those ads because we're being more focused in who we're putting them in front of.
Yeah, that's really great. I'm learning a lot about Facebook ads especially, and how specific they really need to be. I never knew about this stuff, and so I'm learning a lot about just algorithms.
So am I.
Yeah.
Oh, one other thing. Wait, this is actually useful. The quality of the image that you use. So some of the images that I've used for the advertisements have been too busy and have had too much text on them. I thought more is better, but Facebook actually flagged one of them and said, you really have too much text here. And so when I went back, I made a change. And honestly, the way it should work is it's a beautiful image that has very little text on it. And it's just something that people can look at and go, huh, that's cool. And then they'll read the little bit of text underneath it. And then they'll go, yeah, okay, let me see what that is. And they'll click it. That's sort of the experience you're looking for. Not necessarily, let me inform you about this cool thing that I want you to learn more about. That's for whatever, when they click whatever they click, that's what they're going to get on the end of that rabbit hole. But really, to get them to jump into the hole, it's got to be something that almost hits their emotional part of their brain rather than their intellectual part of the brain. So I'm still learning, how to provide quality images. But the best one, the one so far that's performed the best, has been the box. I put up a picture of the box, and it was actually the print image, so it wasn't a photograph of a real box, but it was the actual box cover, and I just put it up there, Breakaway Football, and that's the image that's done the best. It's the one that entices people to learn more.
So, takeaway is good Facebook targeted ads. Make sure that your image has little text, and you want it to inspire some feelings, so they want to click on it. Look for the right Facebook groups that are coming for your stuff, and I think that's a good amount of stuff.
I think so too.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. And this was actually my first episode. I think next episode I'm going to really go over the revamp and what I want to do to change the show. But this was a great, actually, first episode of the new marketing focus. So I really appreciate you being on the show and telling everybody about your trips and tips and tricks. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I do indeed. Thank you very much for having me back. I appreciate
and everybody, thanks for watching. And I guess it's a good time to mention that the show is not at 6 p.m. Eastern time anymore. It is now starting at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And this is a permanent change. I need to change my logo text to the right time, but it is now going to be 7 p.m. Eastern every time. All right. That is all I have. Thanks for watching. I'm Cassie, Elle, and this was Crowd Chat.